Hi, this is Fred Cullen from Green Team Junk Removal, and I'm here with Gray Cooper from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. He is the Director of Hazardous and Solid Waste here in Massachusetts, and we met at an Environmental Business Council at Harvey's back in October. Yep. And I really want to have a chance to sit down and interview you and discuss certain topics with recycling throughout the Commonwealth.
Let's go.
And I appreciate you taking the time and meeting with me.
No, happy to.
So one of the things that I really wanted to stress in this interview was plastic. Mm-hmm. A lot of people want to know what the state is doing about plastic. There is this conception out there that everything goes into the ocean. So what is Massachusetts doing to recycle plastic items?
Well, one of the things, obviously, we do have in the state with Mass DEP regulations that bans the disposal of certain plastics. What we have defined that as is we've banned the disposal of narrow neck plastics. So if you think about drink containers, water bottles, laundry detergent bottles, all of those items are banned from disposal. And what has happened is that has promoted recycling programs at the municipal level to divert all those. So most communities have pretty extensive, if not all communities, have pretty extensive plastics recycling programs that take a whole host of bottles, jugs, jars, and lids.
Yep.
The complex thing that we've found is that there's a lot of other plastics.
There is.
And there are plastics, whether they be plastic toys or plastic bags or film plastics.
Yes.
And people want to recycle them. I can tell you and tell all the listeners that those are not materials that should go in your recycling bin that is collected at your curb.
Okay.
They need to be handled in a different way because the facilities that process your curbside recycling materials don't have the ability to manage that material. So one of the big messages we are saying is do not put plastic bags into your recycling container.
Yeah, I do see that. And then there's also some towns are actually banning plastic bags as well.
Exactly. At the local level, we've seen a lot of communities decide that they want to just ban the use of plastic bags in their communities. Some are looking at banning, and some have looked at banning certain plastic foodware, takeout foodware.
Yes.
So I think that at the local level, and there is now a bill, a few bills up at the legislature that would make something like that statewide. Obviously, the communities that have been implementing it, from what we've heard, they feel it's a success. It's been working well for them, and it does reduce just the generation of plastic waste in general. But I would look, tell residents when you're looking at plastic materials, it may not go in your curbside program, but that doesn't mean that you have to throw it away. There may be a recycling option. The state has a recyclopedia, we call it, and what you can do is you can go on there and you can type in a particular product, and it'll tell you what you can do with it, whether it goes in your recycling bin or whether it should go for recycling somewhere else. So I'm sure you can provide some information to listeners
yes,
about
we will.
those.
We talk a lot about composting. Composting is like the big thing now. A lot of people are trying to figure out what they can do with their food waste. And you and I were just talking about how certain packaged items that don't get sold are making their way into the centers. And what's the process? What's going on there with composting?
So we've been working for a long time on the diversion of organic materials from disposal because they are actually valuable materials that can be easily reused and composted and put back into as soil amendments and other products. So, we way back when we told everybody, and this back in the 90s, we said, no, you can no longer throw away leaves in yard waste. And I think everybody kind of understands. I shouldn't put my leaves in yard waste in with my trash.
Yes.
My town provides some sort of composting, or I can compost in my backyard with those materials. And now we've progressed to looking at food waste. So what can we do with all the food waste we generate? And, it is a lot. We generate about 5.7 million tons of waste in the Commonwealth, and about 25% of that is food waste.
Wow.
So we've got a lot of work to do on this area, but there is a lot of opportunity. We banned the disposal of commercial organics from large generators back in 2014.
Yes.
And it's been wildly successful. The businesses are doing it. they're saving money doing it, they're sending it off for composting or anaerobic digestion, which is turning food waste into energy, or they're sending it off for animal feed. And one of the big benefits that we've seen from this ban is that food donation or reclamation, feed the hungry, has gone up 60% since we've started this. So we've got more work to do. There's still a lot more food waste, and I would encourage residents, to look at backyard composting opportunities. There's a lot of private services out there that will come and collect the food waste and take it for composting. So look into those opportunities. It's coming to you.
Another item that I'd like to talk to you about is mattresses. As a junk removal company, we're always going into homes, we're always taking out mattresses, and we're actually finding it harder to dispose of these mattresses. And we tell the clients that, a lot of landfills, they don't want the mattresses. And what is the state doing to really help with that issue?
So we are hearing and seeing the same thing that you are. We've, over the past few years, we've been working on mattresses and trying to figure out how we can best divert those from disposal. Waste companies, landfills, incinerators, they don't want them. They typically are charging a surcharge anywhere from $20 to $50 a mattress to take it.
Yep.
So we saw an opportunity. Well, can someone recycle that product at a cost that's competitive with that? And what we've found is that we provided grants to municipalities to kind of help understand how can we collect these effectively at a municipal level, and then where do we take them? And how can they be processed? And we've provided assistance to recyclers of mattresses to start up, get the equipment they need. And now what we're seeing is we're in a position where we feel like we have a pretty strong infrastructure for mattress recycling. The price to recycle mattresses from our vendors ranges anywhere from $10 to $25, so that's cheaper than throwing it away in the trash. And it's just a matter of us figuring out the logistics with companies such as yourself how to get those materials to those recyclers. We're going to be proposing in our draft solid waste master plan that we released for public comment back in fall, we were looking at banning the disposal of mattresses because we feel we have an alternative for them.
Yes, that a lot of companies, we're hearing about that proposed ban, and we're preparing for it.
Good.
So I actually have a couple questions from some of my customers. They knew that I was doing this interview, and I asked them, I said, is there anything you'd like me to bring up in the interview that they would like to know about?
Mike L. from Holliston asks, electronic waste is becoming an issue in many landfills today. In 2016 alone, 44 million tons of electronic waste was created. That's equivalent to the weight of 4,500 Eiffel Towers. In a world with increasing technological development, how can we properly dispose of our electronics? Can they be recycled and reused?
They can. I like to believe that we were at the forefront of this electronic issue. We actually prohibited the disposal of cathode ray tubes, which were the old television sets and the computer monitors. We banned the disposal of those back in 2000. So, 19 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yes.
We saw this as a problem. And what we've seen is from that, we've seen a continued growth of a recycling industry for that material. But there's a couple areas that I think we could make a lot more advancements in. One is in the area of reuse and repair. There's a lot of, people go through these products or see the newest electronic product and they want to buy that. And, and obviously they can do that.
And they dispose the older one.
But hopefully, in many cases, that older one is maybe still functioning or can be repaired and has a second life.
Yes.
And we want to try and figure out, I think there's some advancements that we can make in trying to promote that activity and thereby put these, usable electronics back into service and not have them go for disposal immediately. The second thing I think is defining the definition of, is kind of expanding the definition of electronics.
Yep.
Because there's now a computer screen on your refrigerator. And we need to kind of think more broadly about managing electronics. It's not just about the computers and the television sets and the phones. It's about, I would say, we should start looking at it from anything that's got a plug, a toaster oven, a bread maker, you name it. We need to start thinking about how are we going to collect and manage and recycle those materials also.
Yes, I really strive with my company to make sure, because electronics are one of the hardest products to get rid of because not a lot of donation centers want electronics.
Yeah.
So what I try to do is I try to find smaller organizations that will accept those electronics that are working for those families that could use them. Because again, we really don't want to waste a product that could be reused. So we're really pushing the reuse factor with Green Team Junk Removal. You know, we take extreme pride in that.
It's fantastic. I love it.
Yes. Now, we have another question.
Phil T. from Sharon asks, the EPA recently reported that only 34% of U.S. solid waste was recycled. And in 2015, the total generation of municipal solid waste was over 262 million tons. Paper and cardboard make up the largest percentage of solid waste at 25.9%, with yard trimmings, plastic, and electronics holding higher percentages. Do you think these statistics will increase over time?
I personally think they will. We are seeing issues already with cardboard. Is there anything that you could touch on?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say I will disagree.
Okay.
I think the trend will be that we are, and what we've been seeing is a decreasing in the amount of solid waste that we are generating. To give you an example, right today and over the past decade, the amount of trash generated for disposal on a per capita basis has decreased 18%.
Okay.
In Massachusetts, not everywhere, but in Massachusetts. So, and that's what my job is. But what we see is that we see, as I mentioned, we throwing away about 5.7 million tons of material, and that's 18% less than we did 10 years ago. Okay. And so I'm seeing a trend, but we're not getting there I think a lot of people would like to see us get there quicker. And a few of the items that we have been successful in, you mentioned paper. The national figure, you're right, is about a quarter of it is recyclable paper. Well, here in Massachusetts, it's only about 10 or 11%.
Okay.
So we're pretty effective at getting that material. The materials that I see us kind of to deal with initially right now is really kind of dealing with food waste. And how do we manage food waste, which is representing about a quarter of what we throw in our trash. If we can effectively remove a good chunk of that, we'll be making a lot of progress.
Awesome. I really like the fact that the numbers are coming down. And for me, I always see certain numbers, and I guess it can throw your perception off because it's like, wow, they're really going up, but I guess they're coming down. Now, landfills are an issue in the state. We're actually losing space, and some of them are closing. So what is the state's plan to work on the landfill issue?
Well, I mean, it's a very complex one. There's nothing in the state regulations that we have that prohibits the building of a new landfill. But we haven't seen a new landfill built in Massachusetts since 1995.
Would it be because nobody wants to have one on their property?
Exactly. I mean, obviously there are impacts with landfills, whether they are immediate impacts of trucks and the potential odors that go with it, or if there's long-term impacts of having that type of facility in your particular community. And in Massachusetts, we have what's called home rule, where local governments have quite a bit of control of what actually happens in their community. And they are actually the ones that approve a landfill or other solid waste facility to be sited in their community. Once the community says that they will accept this facility, the department will then come in and permit it, make sure it runs correctly, because we have the expertise and knowledge about how to make sure that that's done properly. But siting it is actually a big decision. A giant part of that decision is made by the municipality. And I think the problem is that there's just a lot of opposition at the local level for having that type of facility. What that means and what we've seen is, as I mentioned at the meeting we were at, we've seen a lot more waste management companies come in looking to build transfer stations
Yep.
where they would load the waste that's generated onto a truck or a rail car and move it out of state.
And rail it out.
We don't necessarily dictate what type of disposal options we have. Whatever comes to us in a permit here at DEP, whatever comes in a permit application, we will look at it. So if you want to submit a landfill application, we'll look at it. You want to submit a transfer station, you'll look at it. It still will need local site assignment.
Yes.
It'll still need their authority. So I think it's just a factor of we're going to have to figure out how we're going to deal with the waste that we're generating. Like I said, we're seeing it drop. Hopefully it'll continue to drop, and we'll need fewer and fewer waste disposal facilities and transfer facilities. But in the meantime, we're going to have to really work about how we're going to divert this waste away from disposal and into recycling.
How are the other states at receiving waste from Massachusetts? Are they accepted, or do you get some pushback from other states that, hey, we got our
Right.
own issues? We don't.
I think it depends on the state. You know, we've got waste that obviously moves across borders on a regular basis, could go in New Hampshire to Maine to Vermont, could go to New York. We got waste that goes out of the region to South Carolina, to Ohio, to Pennsylvania. So it really, I mean, one thing people don't realize is that solid waste is actually considered it's commerce.
Yes.
And it can move freely across borders. I think as states, so some states are, I guess, they're ambivalent about taking it. They're okay with taking it, and it's being accepted. Oftentimes we've seen other states, one that comes to mind, not for Massachusetts waste, but happened down in New York, is Pennsylvania didn't like getting all of New York's waste.
Yep.
So they put a very high tax on waste, basically up the price of waste to kind of slow down the amount that was going to be transferred in from New York. So you may see things like that, and the market will have to react.
Yes.
But that is just kind of, like I said, the system in Massachusetts is very privatized. We oversee it from a regulatory and compliance standpoint.
Yes.
But it's run predominantly by private companies, and so I think they're going to take whatever the market gives them and look for the best, most efficient, effective, cost-effective way of managing the material.
Okay. We already talked about plastic, but I kind of want to just touch on it a little bit more. What is happening with the plastic that's being recycled here in Massachusetts? It's being broken down. What is the process?
So typically, the plastics that you're putting in your curbside bin and is getting picked up by your recycling service.
They shouldn't be going to an ocean.
They should, if they're put into your recycling bin, they're not going to be going to the ocean.
Okay.
And if they're put in the trash, they're not going to be going to the ocean. I think what we have with ocean plastics is a litter issue.
Yes.
It's it blows through a plastic bag. You can lose control of that pretty quickly. It flies out of your hands and it can be gone.
Exactly.
So we, obviously litter is an issue that all of us should care about and try to, and prevent and do whatever we can to, encourage others not to litter. But the plastics that go into your recycling bin will go to a processing plant where they are separated from the other materials. And then typically what will happen with that, they will sort those plastics into various plastics, PET plastic, HDPE plastic, which is the laundry detergent bottles and the water bottles, and they will then send those off to another processor who will grind it, flake it, wash it,
Yep.
and then repelletize it, and
Okay.
then sell it to a manufacturer who makes detergent bottles.
So that's how it's being
Yep.
recycled. and
So what
reused.
goes in your recycling bin is getting recycled. As long as it's one of the materials that they are asking for, which is
Yes.
an important concept we can touch on.
The question I'm going to ask you that everybody wants to know, and they always say it, are we in a crisis for recycling and waste?
I think we are in and I wouldn't necessarily call it a crisis, but certainly the system that we have for disposal is kind of in a transition.
Okay.
We've had some facilities, landfills closures that have happened recently in the past year or two, which has limited in-state disposal capacity. And we have seen the industry trying to respond to that need for capacity. And as I said, they are responding in terms of building transfer facilities. So we're kind of in a little transition away from these landfill closures into a different management mechanism. And that has had an impact on pricing.
Yes.
And how materials are moving and how quickly they're moving. And then that's kind of the waste side of things. I think it will settle down as these newer operations come online, the rail hauling and the other transfer operations. It'll settle down a little bit. On the recycling side, I think everybody has heard somewhere or another about the China National Sword.
Exactly.
And how that they decided to stop taking recyclables, and if
I did read there was a bill being proposed, I don't know if it went through with the federal government, that they're looking to build more domestic plants to help out with recycling domestically, so we don't have to go ahead and export out to other countries, and we can start doing it a lot here in the United States, which I think would be huge.
Yeah, back in 2018, the normal operations of recycling was we're going to get it all here, we're going to package it, we're going to sort it into bales, paper bales, aluminum bales, plastic bales, and we're going to take advantage of really cheap shipping costs from China. We're going to put it on shipping, cargo ship, and send it over to China to have them remanufactured into products.
Yes.
And so it was working very well for everybody. Those shipping containers were coming back to the U.S. with products, and we'd load them up with raw materials that would then be made into new products.
It was a cycle.
Right, and but we kind of got a little bit too reliant on that particular customer.
Yes.
And China decided to say, we don't want to take any more. They felt that they were getting dumped on. I'm not exactly sure, no one knows the exact story, but the reality is they decided they don't want to take it.
Yes.
And I
so
think
we had to find alternatives.
Right, and so what I think is happening, and it takes a little time for that to happen, and so the markets have been pretty depressed over the past couple of years, but the infrastructure needs to, the opportunities for that supply of material still exist. So we're seeing a lot of investment in domestically, new paper mills, new plastic operations, because they see that supply of material that now is not going to China any longer, and has an opportunity to be used here. And so I think that's good. We just have to kind of weather the storm here for a little bit until that capacity comes online.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. So
you and a whole bunch of other recyclers.
So what we did talk about Green Team and how our method is to recycle, reuse, and donate 80% of everything that we haul. Obviously, you know about our relationship with Harvey's and Habitat. And I think one of the things we discussed was the state has a program that you guys are really pushing out to the public. And I'd like you to talk about that, because we're going to push that program onto our customers as well to make them aware of what the state is doing.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So, as I said, we talked about China and the impacts, and one of the problems, or one of the answers from China as to why they did it, is they felt there was a lot of contamination in recycling, in what was going into the recycling system. And they were right. We looked at some recycling facilities and have kept tabs with recycling facilities in our state, and in some areas they're receiving 20 to 30% contamination in a load of recycling. So that's 20% of things that the facility does not have the ability to recycle. And we're talking bowling balls, Halloween skeletons, textiles, hoses, all sorts of things that I think people just may not know, but where to put them. They'd like to recycle them. Sometimes they've called them, wishful recycling, but actually they cause more problems than they do benefits by being put into that recycling system. So one of the things we are doing, and we've started a new social media campaign. It's called Recycle Smart, and there's a website, recyclesmartma.org. It provides information to the public about what should go in their recycling container and what should not. And then if they have further questions, they can find out through our Recyclopedia, which has a link on there, what they can do with that material. So we think people want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
They just need to understand that there's a variety of systems in place. It's not all throw it all into one place. I wish it were that way.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet. And I think we're trying to just educate the public that here's the opportunities that are in front of you. And we have had a lot of success with the social media campaign. We got about 25,000 followers right now on Facebook and Twitter, and I think it's growing. So we're hopefully the message is getting out there.
One of the things I do want to touch on, because we actually hear a lot of complaints about the trash barrels. The recycling bins are bigger than the trash barrels. Now, did the state talk to the private vendors? Was that something that the state wanted to try to really push recycling and focus more on recycling than household trash?
Those decisions on containers are typically made at the local contract. I think we do have programs where we provide grants for recycling containers.
Okay.
We also have started to provide grants for waste containers, but they have to be small waste containers.
Okay.
The concept is basically whatever you give somebody, they're going to fill it up. So if you give them a big recycling container, they're going to fill it up with recyclables.
Yes.
If you give them a big trash container, they're going to fill it up with trash. And I think towns have figured out that if we provide a smaller container, or if we go to a pay-as-you-throw program, which is where people have to pay for a particular volume of trash, or buy a per bag or sticker or something like that, they find out that there's a lot less waste generated and a lot more recycling happening. And I think that's the way that they can try to reduce costs and better protect the environment here in Massachusetts.
Well, I have one last question, and then this is actually from one of our customers. It's more of a personal question to you, and it is sustainability of value to you? Obviously it is. How do you promote sustainability and these other values at home?
Well, I've been doing this work for the department for 25 years, so obviously it's something I care about. And obviously when you care about something, it stays with you when you walk out the door after work every day and go home. In my own house, obviously I'm lucky. I feel like I'm lucky. I live in a community that has a pretty extensive, we have a pay-as-you-throw program.
Yep.
We've got a lot of services at a drop-off transfer station where I can get rid of clothing, I can recycle my clothing, I can recycle scrap metal.
One thing I want to touch on this question that I really think is cool. School districts are teaching the kids at a young age to recycle. Boston has a great recycling program in their school system. They really push recycling with their students at a very young age. And I also believe that millennials are more apt to recycle than an older generation. So I think the education and what the state is doing is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for interviewing with me. I also want to thank the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This is a great opportunity for Green Team to do this video with a partnership with the Mass DEP to really promote recycling and reuse. And I want to thank you to our viewers, and we hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks.